Hello, and welcome to this in-depth live update on the tensions between Iran and the United States. Today, we're looking at how an ongoing political and security crisis has triggered alarm across the region, and what it means that Tehran has now reopened its airspace after a sudden closure. Stay with me as we break down the latest developments, explain what's happened and what might be coming next. We begin with the situation on the ground and in the skies. In a dramatic turn of events, Iran closed its airspace for almost 5 hours, a move that sent shockwaves through global aviation and fueled fears of a broader confrontation. That closure forced airlines to cancel, reroute or delay flights across the region. But authorities in Tehran later lifted that restriction and reopened the skies, allowing commercial traffic to resume. This dramatic shift in aviation status isn't just about planes. It's a symbol of how fragile things are right now between Tehran and Washington. Why did Iran close its airspace in the first place? Officials say the move was linked to fears of possible military action against Iran by the United States. Airlines and flight tracking services reported the closure came as tensions were rising over Iran's internal protests and the U.S. response. This closure was not a typical flight safety or weather measure. It was a political and strategic reaction to rising uncertainty, a signal that Iran's leaders felt threatened enough to restrict movement in their national skies. The drama has been amplified by repeated public statements from former U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump has issued a series of warnings to Iran, including implications that the United States might take military action in response to Iran's brutal crackdown on anti-government protests. At times, his rhetoric suggested an imminent response. At other points, Trump has appeared to soften his tone, saying he's been told that some of the worst violence against protesters has stopped. Yet he hasn't ruled out action if U.S. interests or regional security are threatened. This kind of mixed messaging can create a high-stress environment for governments and militaries. And that stress shows up in actions like closing airspace. So what does the reopening of the skies mean? The simple immediate effect is that flights that had been grounded or rerouted can now travel across Iran again, bringing some relief to airlines and passengers. But symbolically, reopening airspace suggests a slight easing of the recent peak tension. It does not mean the crisis is over. It means authorities believe the immediate threat of escalation has receded, at least for now. We can't talk about this international tension without talking about what's happening inside Iran. The country has been shaken by widespread anti-government protests. These demonstrations, driven by economic hardship and political dissent, have led to large-scale crackdowns and thousands of casualties. The US and other governments have condemned the crackdown and in some cases have called for international action, including sanctions, and in the most extreme interpretations, military responses. It's this backdrop of protest and repression that is feeding international pressure and the threat rhetoric you've been hearing from Washington. What you should also know is that regional and global powers have weighed in. Some nations in the Middle East have urged diplomacy and restraint, warning that any military action could destabilize the region even further. At the United Nations, there have been calls for emergency discussions and briefings on the situation, driven by concerns about both human rights abuses and potential conflict. European countries have also taken the unusual step of advising their citizens to leave Iran, a clear sign of how seriously some governments are treating the risk of escalation. Is this going to lead to a full-scale war? At this point, most analysts say it's unlikely. The reopening of the airspace suggests leaders on both sides recognize how dangerous an escalation could be. That said, the pattern of actions and reactions, threats, closures, evacuations, advisories, shows how close tensions have come to crossing a dangerous line. This is a standoff with many moving pieces: domestic unrest in Iran, Trump's foreign policy posture, international diplomacy, and the ever-present risk of miscalculation in military affairs. Let's summarize what we know. Iran temporarily closed, then reopened its airspace amid fears of potential American military action. Trump's commentary and threats have kept tensions high without leading to direct conflict so far. Protests inside Iran and heavy repression have fueled global condemnation. Regional powers and international organizations are calling for restraint. This situation is evolving by the hour, and as we've seen, even gestures like reopening the sky can have deep political meaning. We'll continue to monitor this story and bring you updates as they happen. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts on how this crisis might unfold. Do you think diplomacy will prevail, or are there more twists ahead? Let me know down below.